Welcome to Adams Athenaeum. Let's take a look together through the news and records of our times as we try to shed light upon the unvarnished truth. Thanks for coming back to this episode where we're going to do things quite a bit differently, and I may not be able to get through my original plan as hoped. That's all right. We'll start somewhere and we'll end somewhere today. There's going to be a lot of topics to cover, and I'm going to do my best to keep them all cohesive, somewhat intertwined together, and hopefully bring some new details to light on stories you may have heard, or maybe bring stories to your attention that you have not heard of yet. The first section that I'm going to be starting on, I will say that it just has questions, leads me to ask a lot of questions. This first section that I'd like to talk about, we're going to ask, how commonplace is this? How regular is this? Is this normal? And should you believe everything you're hearing? Let me also preface this episode with things are going to be a little bit slower paced. There may be a little bit of time in between me talking. I may take breaks. It's going to be a lot to cover. We're going to be here for a while. Go ahead, grab your popcorn, grab your snacks, grab your drinks. I got my soda, got my water, got some snacks over there. So let's hang out for a while. Let's learn together. So I kind of made some bullet points of ideas of some things that I want to talk about, and well, there's many bullet points. I think we're only going to get through a short section today, and go ahead and highlight some of these topics. That way you can choose to stay or go. I plan to talk about forest fires, forest fire prevention in California and Colorado more specifically, but also recently there was New Jersey. We're going to talk about factory explosions in Chicago, Pennsylvania. Can't forget the one in Beirut that almost looked like an atomic bomb, right? Scared a lot of people. We're going to talk about all the train derailments, how frequent those are, how often it happens. Is it normal? And then we're going to get into some other things that are a little darker, that may have more implications. Maybe I'm just reading too far into it. But these other topics include things such as power grid attacks. We've got chicken farm fires, dairy farm fires, and let's not forget about the mass cullings happening at chicken farms because of avian flu. We're going to talk about why these mass cullings are taking place with regards to avian flu, but one thing at a time, right? So I want to share some of these pages that I've got pulled up that we can all look at the same thing here. We're going to start with the dairy farms. So over here, I don't know how many of you have heard about this recently, but recently in Texas, about 18,000 cattle were killed in a fire at a dairy farm in Texas. And here it says, Texas dairy farm explosion, by far deadliest barn fire for cattle after at least 18,000 killed. 18,000 cows, they say, is enough to cover 26 football fields. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is just one thing to look at. I mean, doesn't shock or raise too many questions in and of itself. I mean, we could ask how the fire started. Was there negligence? Was it random act of God? Who knows? Can't speculate off of one incident, right? But when you listen to the news and you dig into the news, as often as I do, you start to see things. You start to see patterns. That's what humans are good at, right? And just one of the things I've noticed is all of these different types of, I can't even necessarily call them attacks, all of these different events that are happening that cause damage. Some of them are normal, right? Natural disaster is a part of life. And I get it. Sometimes when you get too far into the news and that's really what you're focused on, and, to some degree, the algorithm kind of feeds you the same type of information. I understand there's the potential to believe that this happens all the time, everywhere. So we have to be rational when we're looking at these things, right? So I figured if I type in dairy farm fires into DuckDuckGo, because I don't use Google, even though it's somewhat the same, I figured maybe other dairy farm fires of recent times would come up as well. So as we're scrolling down here, it only talks about this recent explosion that most of these articles are from about 3 days ago, right? Even if we keep going down, 18,000 cattle. Just want you to see what I'm seeing. That way you can tell I'm not trying to hide anything from you. It just seems like one event. Here's one. Columbiana County dairy farm loses barns and calves in fire. This was from last year. And one from 2020, early 2023. Gorham Dairy rebuilds after an electrical blaze destroyed a 200-year-old barn. So going off just what we're getting from DuckDuckGo here, from the first page and a half, we're seeing what, maybe one, maybe two a year. Okay, that's not bad. Is there, so then my next question would be, was this Texas dairy farm an electrical issue? Now, from what I've read, there was something about a propane tank that exploded. Okay. Were they storing the propane tank as it should be? Was the propane tank operating as it should be? Were they operating it as it should be operated? And were there any known leaks? Were people smoking by it? Or did someone sabotage it? Just questions. Don't have proof. Not trying to prove anything. Just want to ask the questions. So I've got some other articles pulled up here. Let me get them up here. Just share the whole window. We'll do that. And then we should be able to see it. All right, here we go. So from CNN, this first article that we're going to look at here says, New Jersey wildfire, 75% contained as all roads are to reopen soon. This was April 12th, so 4 days ago. Don't know how many of you have heard about this forest fire in New Jersey. Let's read a little bit about it. The blaze that began in Manchester Township on Tuesday evening has burned 3,859 acres, authorities said, and all of the previously announced road closures in the area were to be lifted at 9 p.m. The fire remains under investigation, the Forest Service added. The fire came as record heat sets in across the Northeast. Maybe there was record heat in the Northeast in April of this year. And I don't know about you. Now, granted, I don't live in New Jersey. But where I live, the weather that I've been looking around the states, I don't think anyone has broken 100 degrees yet. Maybe Arizona, maybe Florida's gotten close, but New Jersey broke a heat record, and that's what started a forest fire potentially. That doesn't really make sense. Now, again, the questions that I would ask is, if this was a forest fire, what steps in forest fire prevention were taken previously? Did they clear trees X amount of feet from the side of any major roadways? Did they clear debris off the side of the road for X amount of feet off the sides of roadways? Did they do controlled burns in thicker part of the forest? Have they taken out dead fallen trees? Stuff like that. Things to help mitigate in case there is a forest fire. These things will help slow it down. California is notoriously bad about their fire prevention. That's why I have these questions. So New Jersey, according to CNN, the fire remains under investigation. Okay, we can give it time. I'm cool with waiting for an answer. But for them to say that the fire came as record heat sets in across the Northeast, it's as though they're trying to say this is global warming's fault. I'm sorry, my friends. We just passed Easter. We're barely into spring. And you're going to tell me that a record heat wave could be the cause of this fire? It just doesn't make sense. That sounds like a personal agenda and propagandist speech by this author, Aya Elamrosi. Don't care if I pronounced her name wrong. And Tina Burnside from CNN. So, again, just questions. Wildfires happen. I'll expand on that later. But wildfires happen naturally all the time. There is lightning. I mean, remember Bambi? Started a forest fire. I know it's just a kid's movie, but happens in real life. It's just curious that people will try to use this for their climate agenda. And we'll get back to that later. One of the next topics I wanted us to look at together, well, no, I'm going to skip ahead here real quick. We're going to go from New Jersey over to kind of just like we were talking about, Colorado and California. So over here, let's let this load up. Give me just a minute. All right, so Colorado forest fires. I don't know how many of you have paid attention to forest fires in the news over the last, let's say, decade. But if you have paid attention, if you've lived in Colorado, California, you would know that for the last 10 years, maybe 15, there's been droughts and severe droughts all the time. At least where I lived, I don't know about California, but for the most part, fireworks were basically illegal unless it was like the July 4th city event, you know what I mean? Where there was permits involved. Otherwise, July 4th was kind of quiet. I apologize. I lost my train of thought on how I was going to try and tie these two together. But anyway, oh, right. Okay. So in Colorado, it's been known because of the droughts that there's been a lot of wildfires. Some happen from lightning strikes. Some others that I can remember were there was like 18-wheelers or, trucks that had chains maybe attached to their trailers or their towing trailers or whatever that would hit the ground, cause sparks. And again, if you don't have enough debris or like grass and brush, on the side of the highway cleared, then these sparks can catch that on fire, start a forest fire, especially in the windy mountains. Another one was people throwing out cigarette butts in the mountains in the middle of a drought with like high wind advisories. Hasn't rained for months. You know what I mean? The forest fires can spark easily. So that comes, again, it makes me question, how well are we maintaining our forests? How much money are we spending, say, on painting BLM or rainbow flags in the middle of the streets instead of spending money on preventing these forest fires? Now, granted, let's have a quick conversation about forest fires. To some degree, they can be great and beneficial, right? They get rid of all the dead and all the waste, and it helps clear for new land that is, I don't want to say fertile, that's not the right word, but life has a new chance sometimes when fires go through. But let's not forget those wildfires that happened in Australia. I don't know how many of you remember or saw pictures of live news teams in Australia when this was going on, rescuing koalas from trees and from brush on the sides of the road that were, their fur was singed, some of them still burning. And these koalas were so okay with these humans touching them because all these koalas knew was that they needed help. Can a koala and other animals really understand a forest fire? What to do? Like, we know, stay low, try to cover your mouth, that to help prevent smoke inhalation. There's certain things we know to avoid fire: stop, drop, and roll. Does an animal know this? No. They're innocent victims, maybe from someone's cigarette, maybe from someone's trailer, maybe from an act of God, maybe from a lightning bolt, right? So forest fires can be devastating, not just to the animals and the local wildlife, but to homes. I mean, some of these homes in California and Colorado, I remember they burned thousands of homes, tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres sometimes. Some got dangerously close to major tourist attraction cities, right? So anyway, wildfires can be good after a lot of devastation and harm has come. So you would think that you would want to prevent something horrible from this like happening. So maybe instead of painting stupid slogans in the middle of the street, we could spend that money fighting forest fires before they happen. Just a thought. So recently in Colorado, Rampart Fire. It was recently 100% contained. Let's read a little bit about it. Burned an estimated 20 acres. Let's see here. This looks like a pretty good one here. I'm going to go to Fox 21 News for this article, just to read a little bit from them. From Ashley Eberhardt and Sarah Ferguson, they write, in Teller County, Colorado, the Rampart Fire burning near Woodland Park is 100% contained. The burn area remains at 20 acres. So it wasn't terrible. Again, I've seen ones that have burned thousands, tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres. What I'm starting with here is just recently, right? We've talked about the dairy farm. That was recent. We've seen that about once a year or so, there's dairy farm fires. Going on to forest fires and forest prevention. How often do these forest fires occur? Well, let's scroll down a little bit. From 1 year ago, just being suggested here from YouTube, dangerous wildfires tear through Colorado neighborhoods, leaves devastating results. Wildfires near Boulder, Colorado, forced thousands to evacuate. All right. Let me pull up this other fire that is just burned into my memory. Sorry for the pun. But like one of my favorite places to go in Colorado is the Glenwood Hot Springs pool. And I remember this fire. I mean, there was several fires around that area. Again, within the last 10 or 15 years, huge fires. Sometimes I couldn't go to Glenwood that year because of these fires. It says, let's see here. We've got, these are going to be from a while ago. Just again, to kind of forewarn you. Grizzly Creek fire was August 21st, 2020. Near 30,000 acres in Glenwood Canyon. That's a ton compared to the 20 acres that we just read about, right? The growth for the fire that started August 10th was only estimated at a little more than 200 acres, more than Thursday night. And again, remember, this is old news. It's been put out a long time ago. But all lanes, both directions of I-70, which is the major highway running through there, remain closed from Glenwood Springs to Gypsum, or mile marker 116 through 140. See, there we go. Like we were, the Grizzly Creek fire started on August 10th, believed to be human caused by sparks from a popping tire, dragging chains, or a rim along I-70. A freak accident. Things happen, right? But what are you doing to prevent things like this? So now let's go to California and remind ourselves of the bad forest fires from 2021. California fires, more than 40,000 Californians evacuate. Let's go ahead and check out this article from CNN real quick. Here it says by Sherry Mossberg and Kelly McCleary. Again, this is from August 23rd, 2021. I'm sure the fires have been long put out since then. No need to worry. But, right, more than 42,000 Californians have been forced to flee their homes as 9 large wildfires continue to burn out of control in the northern part of the state, prompting Governor Gavin Newsom to request a major disaster declaration from President Biden. The Caldor fire, which scorched 106,562 acres, is the top firefighting priority in the nation. Officials fear the fire, which is just 5% contained at this time that they wrote this, may push its way into the populated Lake Tahoe Basin. And they warned all Californians, think about that, they warned all Californians to be ready to evacuate. California is a huge place, huge state. And they warned all Californians to be ready to evacuate. The Dixie Fire, the second largest fire in the state's history, which had been burning for more than a month, had grown so large that its perimeter stretched more than 500 square miles. The blaze had swelled to more than 725,000 acres and was 40% contained at the time of this writing. And there was also 2 other large fires. The Walker Fire and the French Fire are still growing, and each inferno has its own specific needs, said Porter, who is helping coordinate the massive effort to deploy resources, including firefighters, aircraft, and equipment, to each area as appropriate. The flames prompt closure of 9 federal forests. Now, some of these were sparked by human mismanagement, we'll say. Human accident. Could have been sparks from tires, could have been lightning strikes, but, and I don't have this pulled up right now. Sorry, pulled the wrong one. I don't have it pulled up right now, but at the time, this was 2020, 2021, California forest fires. I don't know how much we all remember about it, but there was reports that some of these fires were started by, what do they call them nowadays? Like free backpackers or something. Essentially, homeless people with a political agenda were starting fires. It seems that these homeless people were affiliated with a group many know as Antifa. Antifa, I don't care what you call them. They're a bunch of fucking rejects who don't understand the way of the world. They call everyone a fascist and a Nazi, yet they exercise fascist tactics. They were to blame for some of the forest fires in California. Please feel free to look that up for yourself. Now then, and you may have some difficulty if you try to find that. Why? Well, we have congressmen and women such as Jerry Nadler who think the Antifa is a myth, who, when questioned and given evidence of Antifa's actions, said, I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard of them. They're a myth. Okay. I can only do so much to bringing attention to things like these, to folks like that. Some people are just ignorant. Some people are woefully ignorant. Some people are blissfully ignorant, right? Some people choose not to listen to politics because it's boring, because it doesn't interest them. I can't say I blame you. I was there 5-10 years ago. I hated politics. I remember my dad trying to make me watch the State of the Union or some speech by Bush. And like he kind of told me like, hey, this speech is going to be airing tonight on TV. We're going to watch it together. I think it'd be a good experience for you. Okay, cool. But I was not looking forward to it. Very angry that I had to waste my time and learn about politics. And I didn't really pay much attention to what was said. I didn't really listen. Everything went in one ear. Most of it went out the other. It wasn't until later in life when things personally started to affect me or the people I love or the neighbors around me that I really started to question, what have I been told and taught? What have I been doing to inform others? I started to question what I was being told, and lo and behold, I found out that a lot of what I've been told wasn't the truth, wasn't the absolute truth. Some things were left out. Some things were opined on that shouldn't have been. Some things were twisted. And so I had to delve deeper. I had to spend a lot of my time, a lot of my free time, instead of scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or checking out this hottie or that hottie or seeing what the new hairstyle is or who the new Kardashian is, I was learning about what's happening in the world. And it was boring at first. But I started to get more interested because when you realize you're being lied to, it pisses you off. Like when you realize someone that you like has lied to you repeatedly in ways that hurt you, your family, your finances, makes you angry towards them. And then you get a little bit of a drive, and then you want to learn more. And then you're like, wow, this also isn't completely true. Most of what I read about it is true, but what do you know? There's things they left out that matter. The context matters, right? Very good. I can bring this to many people's attention. And hopefully, altogether, we can spread this to thousands, 10 times fold as many people as are watching right now, or will watch later. But as much information as people like I, Tim Pool, Glenn Beck, Steven Crowder can bring you, some of this has to be done on your own. You do have to commit some time and involve yourself. Dedicate some of your focus to figuring out what's happening in the world. Why is it happening and what can you do to fix it? I'm sure many of you, as I, would complain that the last few years have not been good. They've not been happy. They've been stressful. It's been one bullshit event after stupid event after something else that doesn't make sense. It's been one lie after another, and it's all for political gain. And I got tired of it. And so I'm here to bring that to your attention. Here to bring to your attention that There are things happening in the world, many of which are natural, some of which should be questioned. We should, at this point, we shouldn't trust a single thing our government or our major media corporations tell us. Everything you hear should be put under a microscope. I think that's what I have to say about that. Let's continue with some of these topics. We're going to go to some explosions and other types of fires. Actually, we're going to bring up one more wildfire because this one was recent. And this one again was small, but a raging 5-acre Florida fire burns plastic pots outside Kissimmee nursery plant warehouse. Again, this isn't the only article like this, but there's been weird types of fires at herbal supply stores, potting supply stores. Now, again, they have dangerous chemicals, right? Explosions and fires can happen. But how often do we hear about it? How often have you heard about it? And for every time you heard about it, how many times have you not heard about it? For example, out of all these stories that we've brought up so far, how many have you heard about, or how many do you remember? I start to question things when there's, again, it's not a perfect pattern. These are all sorts of weird types of fires that happen in all sorts of weird different industries and places and locations. That's fine. I can take that for an answer. I just want others with the state of our country to question things. Questioning's not bad. You may have a wrong question or a question that's invalid. That's okay, because then you can rule that out. Another thing I wanted to bring up here to your attention was, which I'm sure many have heard about, right here in Indiana, there was a recycling plant fire very recently, and a lot of people were evacuated. Let's read a little bit here. Let's see, we've been doing CNN, so let's see if we can find something more right-leaning. Nope. Okay, well, anything local. Sorry, this is how I look for my articles, is I try to look for a left and a right source, politically speaking. And if that doesn't work, then I try to go local, then state, then countrywide, right? This might be good. So we're going to go here to 6abc.com by Peter Charalambos and Meredith Deliso. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. They write, over 2,000 Indiana residents ordered to evacuate after fire ignites at a recycling plant. The local mayor called the incident a worst-case scenario. More than 2,000 residents are under an evacuation order after a large fire broke out Tuesday afternoon at an Indiana recycling plant. Any resident within a half-mile radius of the Wayne County plant has been ordered to evacuate due to the large industrial fire. Anyone who can see the large smoke plume from the fire should shelter place, according to officials. At a Tuesday evening press conference, Indiana State Fire Marshal Tim Jones said the smoke is definitely toxic and said that as the winds change, they may have to change their evacuation parameters as well. And this went on for a couple days. Nothing too terrible, but originally this recycling plant, had been cited for having debris everywhere and hazardous materials that could be set ablaze easily. And the conditions to quell the blaze would be hard. It'd be hard to reach the blaze if there was one because of all of the debris. So they've been cited several times by safety boards to fix this. Or sorry, excuse me. They were cited at least once to fix these, right? And they never did. So then the fire crews came out and started to try to fight the fire on the first day, but they couldn't get very far. They only had one ingress and egress point, meaning they only had one way that they could get in to fight this fire. And even then, they had to remove a whole bunch of obstacles and debris and clear a bunch of trash just to get as far as they did. The second day, I believe it was the second day, they had to come in with excavators and a whole bunch of other big tools and heavy equipment and machinery to clear debris out of their way so they could finish fighting the fire, which took another day or two, maybe 3 days. And again, poor planning, poor execution. These folks had been warned, you're going to cause a fire. And did they do anything to prevent it? No. The fire department has said that they are wholly responsible for the fire and any damages to property or surrounding wildlife or humans. Another thing that, again, when you just add these all up, they start to make me have more questions. So it was another things I would like to bring to your attention is I just kind of did a DuckDuckGo search, factory explosions in the U.S. First one that pops up is a reminder of the Pennsylvania. This was the Hershey factory, right? Sent 10 to the hospital, damaged several other buildings. There's some pictures of it, I believe. Yeah, here, we'll check this out from The Guardian. March 26, 2023, Pennsylvania chocolate factory explodes, killing 7 in run-up to Easter. Powerful explosion at Pennsylvania chocolate factory, known for making chocolate Easter bunnies. Killed a total of 7 people, authorities said, as emergency workers retrieved the last of the bodies. The deadly blast obliterated the facility 60 miles northwest of Philadelphia, a little more than 2 weeks before Easter. The cause of the explosion remained under investigation on Saturday morning, but officials said they believed it may have resulted from a gas leak. And I don't know how many of you have seen the video. It's a brutal explosion. It very well could have been a gas leak, right? May those folks rest in peace. Here's one from Reuters. I believe this is a different incident. Yeah. 1 killed, a dozen injured after blast at Ohio factory scatters molten metal and debris that rained down on neighboring buildings, killing 1 person. So this was February 21st, 2023. Oh, interesting. As I keep scrolling down here, it looks like that chocolate factory, the Hershey factory, looks like kind of similar to the Indiana plastic fire that I was telling you about. Company ignored complaints of a gas leak. I mean, 2 totally different things, but, you know, the first case, company ignored requests to remove debris that could potentially cause a fire, and guess what happened? A fire happened, and they couldn't get to it because of the debris that they were supposed to remove. Here, company had ignored plaints of a gas leak. What happens? Gas explosion, potentially. Just want to see if there's anything else big that I've missed here. And always go past the first page on Google. If you're going to search for something, always go 2 to 3 pages deep so you can get a fair variety of what you're looking at. You can really start to see people's ideological bends put into even just the headlines. Let's check this out. News4Jax.com. I'm assuming this is Jacksonville. news4jax.com. Their article titled "No Injuries Reported at a Massive Fire at the Panova Plant." So we're going to learn about this one together. I have no idea what this article is. Just showed up. Fire at Glynn County Panova Plant now out. Officials lift shelter-in-place and evacuation orders. This was updated today, this morning at 7:08. So Brunswick, Georgia. Gotcha. I haven't heard about this one. Massive fire at the Panova plant is out after reigniting around 3 p.m. on Saturday. Shelter-in-place and evac order has also been lifted. The latest update came around 10:08 p.m. I named a local declaration of emergency being declared for the city of Brunswick because we did not know the extent to which we could contain this fire, Johnson said. We could not foresee where the wind would be moving. We thought it would be best for us to talk to our entire city and not just one singular piece of it. Just trying to scroll through real quick, see if we can find out. No, cause of the fire still unknown at this time. So again, do we know why yet? Not yet. I'm okay with waiting for answers. But again, how often is this happening? How often does this normally happen? Is this normal? It would seem that a few explosions a year is normal. Big explosions that cause big fires, kill many people. I know accidents happen. I know humans are fallible. I just find it interesting that so many things in relation to our infrastructure are blowing up, are being burned. Let's go to Chicago. Factory explosions in Chicago. An Illinois chemical plant explosion and fires prompt evacuations. This was from 2021. Northern Illinois sparked massive fires that sent flames and huge plumes of thick black smoke high into the air. This more recent, February 6th, 2023. It's just a couple of months ago. Let's check this out from WGN TV. Chicago's very own. They write by Marissa Rodriguez, Sean Lewis, and Sarah Jindra. Factory completely destroyed after massive fire in Chicago Heights. Manufacturing facility in Chicago Heights was destroyed in massive fire Monday morning. Fire broke out around 6 a.m. The 500,000 square foot facility was completely engulfed in flames and quickly spread to neighborhoods. No injuries have been reported. The cause of fire is still under investigation. Now, I'm sure after a fire, after all the devastation and destruction, it's got to be very hard to pinpoint. Usually, anyway, I'd imagine that it's got to be at least fairly hard to pinpoint where a fire starts. Maybe it's easy if you can find like a burned up outlet or, fried wiring going into an appliance. Like, oh, sure, that's where the fire started. Or maybe where everything has been burned the worst. Maybe that's where the fire started, right? So this would seem like a few a year. Again, is that normal? Is there something we're doing or not doing to make this worse? Are there people involved at attacking, again, different parts of our infrastructure? We talked a little bit about farming, dairy farms. We talked a little bit about forest fires. Now we're talking a little bit about factory explosions. Could be all random. I'll give you that. I'm not trying to make you a conspiracy theorist. I'm here to ask the question. Could more of this be tied together than one would think? What do you think? Let's keep going. Many of you, I'm sure, will remember the attacks on the power grid, as this was not too long ago. If you remember, North Carolina, people actually took guns and started shooting at a power plant. There's been others. There's been people throwing like, I'm going to kind of sidetrack for a moment, but just popped into my head. I forgot to bring this up, but there's been people that have firebombed facilities, right? I can't remember if firebombs have been used against like power transformers or power stations. I want to say there was a couple of years ago. Don't quote me on that though. But like Molotov cocktails were being thrown at ICE buildings, federal buildings, detention centers, women pregnancy centers. And if I remember correctly, at some power stations. This is a couple of years ago. When things like that take place, and then you have hindsight, which is 2020, I have questions. How many of these, where the cause of the fire was never known, how many may have been from a bad actor? Let's go back in time a little ways. December 10th, 2022. This is just a highlight. A string of attacks on power facilities in Oregon and Washington has caused alarm and highlighted the vulnerabilities of the U.S. electric grid. Yeah, you're darn tootin', it's vulnerable. And not just to people being dumb and trying to damage it. What about the Chinese spy balloon? CNN. Attacks on the U.S. power grid have been a subject of extremist chatter for a long while. The electric grid has been described as an attractive target for domestic violent extremists in the U.S., citing an intelligence report, is what CNN says. I mean, it makes sense, right? Let's say, under the pretense of a civil war, you have two sides, hypothetically. What do you want to do? What are the major things you want to do to defeat your enemy? Destroy and eliminate their communications, destroy and eliminate their access to food and resources and supplies, and I mean, if you can, take away their power, their energy, their oil, that sort of thing, their electricity. So yes, it would make sense that if one faction of America hates the other, they may attack the power grid. Although, it's kind of like Tom McDonald says, like, why are you going to attack us? We're all in the same boat. Like the boat has a hole in it. It's sinking. You hate me and I hate you, but we're all in the same boat. It's sinking. What does our hate have to do with each other at this moment? Nothing. We both want to live, so how can we help each other live? And then I kind of saved this, well, not quite last. We're not quite to the last part yet. We're a little bit further ahead than I thought we would be. One of the next topics that I have here that I wanted to bring up was, which I'm sure we'll all remember, the train derailments over the last 4 years. The most recent one being in, East Palestine, Ohio. Well, maybe that wasn't the most recent, but that was one of the biggest ones in recent memory. And then just a week or so after that, the same train company had another derailment. And if I remember right, it was also in Ohio. So many people have asked, are train derailments normal? Excuse me. How often does this happen? How bad are they? How many times do dangerous chemicals leak? And how often do these accidents occur to towns, to major lakes, major rivers, stuff like that? And you can see just from the highlights, it seems to be a pretty popular topic, right? Train derailments in U.S. follow years of cost cutting by railroads. Why train derailments are more common than you think? We've got, again, feel free to look at this. I can only bring you so much in so much amount of time. I'm sure there's more interesting ways to catch the news. But if you're only catching the highlights of what they want you to hear, are you really informed? Is what I'm getting at. So, if you really want good reports, you can go here, safetydata.fra.dot.gov, 10-year accident and incident review through the end of December 31st, 2022. That's great. Perfect. But for now, we're just going to kind of keep highlighting rail accidents in the U.S. 2021. We might go back to that. Here we go. NPR. There are about 3 train derailments a day. Let's check this article out from NPR, even though I don't particularly care for them. They're also ideologues. They didn't used to be terrible, but now they are. They write by Joe Hernandez, March 9th, so not too long ago. There are about 3 U.S. train derailments per day. They aren't usually major disasters. A Norfolk Southern train derailed in Springfield, Ohio, with 28 cars going off the rails, the company said, and no one was injured. Now that's from the accident itself. We'll find out about health injuries in the future. And that incident came about a month after the calamitous accident in East Palestine, Ohio, where another Norfolk Southern train carrying hazmat materials derailed near the small town. While experts say the amount of damage caused by the accident in East Palestine is unusual, 2 derailments in 1 month is not. In 2022, there were more than 1,000 train derailments in the U.S. Okay, that means the country is averaging roughly 3 derailments per day. Okay. And it says, we're not hearing left and right about derailments in various places around the country. The main reason for that is that they are not really a major event. Industry leaders say that most derailments occur within the confines of rail yards and suggest that trains are safer than other modes of transportation, such as driving. Okay, that's about all I'm going to take from there. Just a lot of verbiage, not a lot of action. Okay, so the information we can take from there is that derailments are normal and frequent. I looked into this previously, and one of the major sources of train accidents, train collisions, and therefore derailments in modern and very recent history is they seem to take place a lot of times at railroad intersections that do not have the arms or the gates that come down when the train is coming through. Some have flashing lights, some don't. And it's usually at those crossings where major accidents happen. So again, accidents happen. Humans are fallible. We're not perfect. Nature is not perfect. This world is not perfect. We don't live in a perfect world. Bad things happen. But is it normal? Is the response normal? Is the response honest and informed? I remember with the East Palestine derailment, federal authorities were quick to come in and say, there's no danger in the water. And then other experts came in and Once they got their airtime, they let people know that, well, of course, there's nothing to test in the water yet, you fools. It hasn't had time to permeate the soil and then reach the water. You've done your water test too soon. But the media won't tell you that. They also won't tell you that from East Palestine, excuse me real quick, that once the chemicals did reach the water, started to kill schools of fish. Schools of fish were floating downstream, downriver. The water was secretly polluted. It looked fine if you were just walking by it for the most part, unless you threw a rock or churned a stick into the mud in the bottom of the creek bed. And then what do you know? Oil patches just start coming up. Maybe not oil patch, but what, looks like oily or murky or blue tinted water. And then they tried to say, I may get the timing off a little bit here, tried to say something like, well, it won't get into the homes, or I'll pause there because I can't remember it perfectly, but there's some other things about these fires, about the chemicals released into the air, that the federal authorities and the media said one thing, and then that's all they said about it. But if you like me and you listen to, I probably listened to 6 or 7 different podcasters talking about this, on top of all the different articles I've read about it. There's a lot to learn. You were not told everything about the East Palestine train derailment. You're not told everything accurately about the tests and how reliable they were, or accurate that they were. Now, I think I have a little bit of time here to hit a couple we'll hit a couple of these last subtopics in this main category. And then we're going to save the rest of these for next week, for what I had originally planned for this week. So let's wrap this up, and then I'll kind of explain the plan here. So let's do this together. One of the last things I wanted to talk about, let's look it up together. In case you haven't heard. Wow. People have been looking it up like crazy. Chicken farm fires. Complete coincidence? At least 7 large farm fires occur in the U.S. Let's check this out. Now, this is from last year, mind you, from the Western Journal, from June 7th, 2022. They write, by Mike Landry. Complete coincidence. At least 7 large farm fires occur in the U.S. in the last 10 days. In the big picture, they were, for the most part, relatively small-scale events. But with reports of so many fires at food production facilities, you can't help but notice. Coincidence? It could be. But it does get your attention. It's kind of like I've been saying this whole time. Like, if that's what happened, okay, cool. I've got the facts. That's all I need to know. Otherwise, what's really happening? What are we doing to prevent it? That night, tens of thousands of chickens died in a fire at an egg production facility in Wright County, Minnesota. On Friday, some 70 dairy cows escaped when their barn in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania caught fire. They had to be rounded up to avoid being hit by fire equipment. More tragic was a May 28th fire in Laveen, Arizona, southwest of Phoenix, that killed more than 100 animals, including chickens, goats, and sheep, plus 2 dogs. 7 fires at 6 facilities between May 28th and Monday. Of course, given the number of house and other fires around the country in a short amount of time, perhaps the farm incidents are no big deal, except, of course, for the affected property owners. Indeed, Some of the blazes were intense, as at the farm in Rhode Island and the egg farm in Minnesota. And tragic, as happened to a Phoenix family with their animals, they write. It's kind of like I mentioned earlier. They call it differently. We'll talk about it. They write, maybe we're noticing these things more because we are subjected to the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, also called red car syndrome, according to Healthline. You decide to buy a red car, and the next thing you know, you see red cars everywhere. It's not that there are more red cars on the road now. You notice them because you are thinking of buying one. Again, I understand that I hyper look at the news compared to most people. And because of that, it's possible for it to seem like this happens all the time. And the world's just coming to an end. And revelation is coming and end times are here. That's why you got to slow down, take deep breaths, ask deep questions, right? Get multiple sources. Find out. Find what you need to find out. They say, man. They say perhaps we're sensitive to farm fires because it's hard to dismiss recent fires at food production plants around the country. And again, maybe we're a little more worried about food production facility fires because of things like COVID, because of things like COVID where in the middle of a pandemic, you couldn't find certain types of food. We had to deal with stagflation and shrinkflation. I don't know if you remember what those were, but essentially you started paying the same price for what was the same product. Let's say you bought, I'm just giving vague numbers here, okay? Let's say you used to get a 16-ounce box of cereal for $2.50. Well, now you would get the same 16-ounce box of cereal for $4 during the pandemic. Or they'd still sell the cereal for $2, but it'd be like 8 ounces or 12 ounces or something like that. And that was to control the supply and demand. Maybe it's because of recent events that we look too much into this now. I get that. I understand that. I'm not trying to fearmonger anyone here. Simply here to ask the questions. Is there more going on? Because it's not just these chicken farm fires, which again, let's go back a page, as they've been happening for a while. This is more recent. NFPA.org. Conspiracy theory brewing over chicken farm fires is false. Okay, cool. Let's see if they have a real answer in this article, though. Let's check it out. Written February 1st, 2023 by Angelo Verzoni. First, it was fires in food processing facilities. Now a seemingly growing number of people are claiming that there's something suspicious about fires occurring at chicken farms across the United States. Good morning to everyone except the evil demons purposely screwing with the food supply, an influential Twitter user who goes by the name CatTurd tweeted on January 23rd. The tweet received more than 22,000 likes and more than 2,000 retweets. In an attempt to provide proof that something nefarious is afoot, people like CatTurd, who have 1.3 million followers on social media websites, have pointed to incidents like a fire that killed 100,000 chickens at a farm in Connecticut, January 28th, and a fire in December that killed 250,000 chickens at a farm in Pennsylvania. The fires, these people allege, are most likely a government attempt at disrupting the food supply, leading to situations like the soaring egg prices that have gouged consumers' wallets in recent months. Here they go trying to attack Fox News and Tucker Carlson, and they say the conspiracy theory was debunked by NFPA and others. Experts say the high egg prices American consumers are seeing today are in reality a result of many factors, such as widespread avian flu and inflation. In other words, they have nothing to do with fires at chicken farms. Furthermore, experts say that in general, these types of fires should not be seen as anything out of the ordinary. Fires at livestock and poultry production and storage properties are quite common and have been for years. According to data, including a recent fire, animal housing facilities, an estimated average of 930 fires occurred annually in livestock or poultry storage properties, which include spaces like barns, stockyards, and animal pens, in a span of 4 years. An additional average of 750 fires occurred annually in livestock production properties. Combined, that's more than 4 fires on average each day. The AWI reports that more than 325 barn fires occurred in the U.S., killing nearly 2.8 million animals from 2013 to 2017, and 95% of the animals killed were chickens. Okay, so these are good numbers, right? Good sources. I like that they linked the report here. What can we take from this off of its face? We can take that there's 3 to 5 fires happening in the U.S. every day, on average, at places like this: barns, stockyards, animal pens, livestock production properties. And perhaps people like Cat Turd are trying to sensationalize this. I'm trying to bring you the facts. Excuse me. No, I'm not going to lie. My questions sound, we could say, eerily similar to the conspiracy theory questions. But I have just a couple more things to point out on this. So it would seem that most of the fires happen at the chicken plants, since that's where, again, according to their numbers, 95% of the animals killed were chickens. So it would seem, based off that statistic, that the majority of farmland, or however you want to word it, that we have more chickens than, say, cows or other types of livestock, pigs. What I don't like is that they try to say that there's a conspiracy theory about government attempts at disrupting the food supply. Well, that has happened. Not in America specifically, but in the Netherlands. In the Dutch farmers, I don't know if you remember about that. They were told that they could not grow food anymore. And then the police, or it was either police or the military, came to the farmers and began shooting them for protesting. It's funny that the governments around the world are telling us that we're going to have less food, and you better get used to eating bugs. And that over the years, many, many fires have happened at food production facilities. Again, according to the statistics, seems to be normal. Or have these been continuous attacks over the courses of the years to slowly but effectively disrupt the supply chain? Things got worse during and after COVID. Now, they try to mention here that one of the things could be widespread avian flu. Let's talk about that, because I've read many articles about this. Listen to several experts, and here's what they have to say. And I'm going to be paraphrasing. I will not be officially quoting. Again, please take the time to look this up for yourself, because the information is out there. Widespread avian flu is what they're saying. And that it has nothing to do with government or bad actors. Statistically, at these chicken farm fires recently, less than 1% of the entire population of the flock is affected. $100,000, 250,000. There was even a fire where over 300,000 chickens, sorry, not a fire. There was an event where even over 300,000 chickens were culled due to avian flu. Less than 1% of the entire flock was affected. And even then, according to the experts, the tests weren't always positive. It was like, this bird may have avian flu. It's kind of like our false positive COVID test, right? This one bird, these 5 birds, these 10 birds, they might have avian flu. Now, here comes the problem. Because of avian flu, they said that the entire flock has to be culled because we don't know how many chickens it has interacted with. The potential for this to spread is just too great. There's no way that we can successfully sequester or check or diagnose or prevent this from spreading. So we're just going to kill an entire farm's worth of chickens. And maybe that's the truth, but it's the right thing to do. Again, I posed the idea in some of my other videos. If we know this is a problem, if we know that avian flu can kill off an entire flock because less than 1% of a flock is affected, do we need to put 3 to 4 chickens in a cubicle, like an office type cubicle at once, have them all work together and just have billions of cubicles taking over farmland? So that way, when avian flu affects one bird, it's only those 4 that are affected, then you only have to cull 4. Again, we can talk about numbers, room sizes, that type of thing. I think you get the point. Do we have to change the entire way of farming and raising chickens to prevent this type of mass culling from happening because of something that may be causing this very bad devastation? Or are we being overly aggressive in how we're treating it in ways not based on science or fact or reason and making it worse? Like, how can you, like right here, this part just kind of pisses me off because of, I don't know the right word, but it's like the duality of what they're saying. Experts say the high egg prices American consumers are seeing today are, in reality, a result of inflation. No shit, Sherlock. That's what inflation is. The price of shit is going up. Why is the price of this going up? Why are the price of eggs going up, specifically eggs? Why are they specifically going up hundreds, if not thousands of % of their original cost? Do you have an answer for that? No, you don't. Quit using your ideological, spewed out babble that contradicts itself. Duh, inflation caused high prices, but that didn't affect just egg production prices. Why did eggs go up so much? Because the supply has gone down, meaning they need to charge more. That way the demand goes down until they can bring the supply back up. Could be natural. Could be avian flu. Could be bad electrical wiring. Could happen 3 or 4 times a day all across the US. Could be that the government elites have told us you are going to eat bugs. They have shot at farmers who want to farm. Global governments around the world and globally have told their people food shortages are coming. Why? Oh, well, there's a war in Ukraine and they're the breadbasket of the world. So why are we continuing to aid the war there and destroy the farmland? Don't you want the war to be over with so you can keep the farmland that helps so much of the world? Just a lot of things that don't make sense. Like on their face, sure, you gave me an answer. It sounded great. But once you start to get 5, 10, 30 stories deep, you start getting 50 stories deep and you've been going on it for 2 years. You're now a few hundred stories deep and it's only been 5 years total. You got to really ask, what's happening and why? And the more questions you ask, the more holes appear in people's arguments. The more holes you will find in the false stories. And the more questions you ask, the better you'll get at asking the right questions. And those two were basically intertwined. Chicken farm fires, along with the chicken farm mass cullings because of avian flu. That's what they would have you believe. Maybe that's true. I don't have anything to disprove that. That's not what I was here to do. I was here to ask the questions. Is it as they say it is? Or is it like in V for Vendetta? Could you imagine that all these horrible atrocities, these fires, these train derailments, droughts, I'm being facetious here a little bit, and I'm trying to relate it to a movie. Forgive me for not being perfect here. Instead of it being natural disasters, man-made disasters, could you imagine if everything happening right now was a government-made disaster? Or if these are all little disasters being played out by bad actors? There's a lot of questions to ask. And what they told me in the Army is a stupid question. Actually, the only stupid question is the question not asked. So I have no fear of asking what sounds to be a dumb question. It may have a dumb basis in its founding. It may have no logical implication, but at least I asked it, right? So, this is the first category of topics that I wanted to talk through. That was 6 whole bullet points. I have 30, maybe 40 more bullet points to go through. Definitely not going to have time to clear this list today. That's okay. This was, for me, a good test run to see how this type of episode might do. And next week I'll come to you just slightly more prepared in a slightly different way. We'll keep that a surprise. But essentially my plan for today was, since I've been off the internet for so long, just due to life reasons, busy at work, busy at home, got a lot to take care of. And I've been focusing on taking care of things. And it's going pretty good. But because of that, I've been unable to inform you of everything that's been happening else. Things that have happened in my state, maybe even your state. Things that are happening around the country and to the country. I've been taking note of these things while I've been off and away from the internet and writing them down and researching them so I can bring them to you at a later date. My original idea and intent for this episode was to start streaming essentially on a Friday night after I get home from work, and we're going to talk until we're done talking. I don't care if I only stream for 2 hours. I don't care if we get through those 30 or 40 bullet points in 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. I really don't care if I'm streaming from Friday night when I get home until Monday morning when I have to go to work. There's some things that need to be said and called out and talked about as our country is on a perilous path to destroying itself. This episode came about not from a good place, I'll be honest. Originally, this episode came from pure anger, malice, hatred, disappointment, a lack of understanding, perhaps a lack of empathy. But I was furious at the things taking place that continue to take place. I'm still furious about it. But rather than act emotionally or react with my feelings, I did what a good person, good, sane, sober, moral person should do. Took a few breaths, took a few steps away, took a couple days off from YouTube. And I asked questions. I started talking to others about my opinion, not to impose my opinion on them, but to see, is my opinion right? Is my opinion fully formed? Or is it flawed? Is it wrong? Is it misguided? Which then gave me strength to my convictions and told me that no, these are things that need to be talked about, and some of them very passionately. So next week, Lord willing, job willing, house willing, weather permitting, we're going to do a very big episode. We're going to live stream and talk about all the things happening in the world right now, or more particularly the US. We're going to talk about it until I'm done talking about it, or until we get through the topics. It's going to be heated. I'm mad. There's going to be cuss words. I'm going to call people some names. Not specific people or specific groups, but, sometimes if someone's being a cunt, you need to call them a cunt. Sometimes the words need to be said. Sometimes the context needs to be given. So next week, I ask you to come back for a much longer, more detailed episode than this was. Past that, I'd just like to remind you that while this is a work in progress, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate any guidance that you could give me into how to make this more either educational for you, more informative, or more entertaining. Do I pause in speaking too much for dramatic effect sometimes? Do I not look at the camera enough? Is there anything that you would like to see more or hear more of? Anything that you want to know about that I can maybe prep for next week's episode? Please drop it down in the comments below. Many of us have been through this journey together for a while. Some of us have been on the journey a long time. Some have just started. Some haven't even started. Some haven't even found their way to this path yet. It's my goal to reach those people. It's my goal to reach the people on the streets that would react with their feelings rather than just calmly ask some questions. It's my job to try and help people, to find the truth, to shed light upon the truth, to be honest with you, as best as I can. I'm not here to fearmonger you. I'm not here to scare you, intimidate you, or make you hate or fear one group or the other. If the truth makes that happen, then maybe someone's doing something wrong. If you live your life truthfully and respectfully to others, there'll be great things that come your way. If you're a piece of shit, guess what? Actually, that reminds me of this phrase. I'm going to kind of butcher it. Can't remember where it's from, but it's a great quote. Basically, dad talking to teenage son, right? Oh, you want to hate the world? You think you hate the world? Okay, go ahead. Be pissed off at the world. Go ahead and hate the world. See how well that works out for you. Because guess what? You can hate the world, but the world's going to hate you right back. And guess what? There's a lot more people in the world than just you. So if you want to act a fool, you want to be bad, you want to be evil, you want to be mean, go ahead. There's worse than you out there, and you will get your comeuppance. Live life by a few golden rules, right? The golden rule, for one, treat others as you wish to be treated. And then I would expand upon that. Treat others better than you want to be treated, because we normally don't treat ourselves very well. Keep your hands to yourself. Respect others. Treat everyone with the same respect as treat the janitor with the same respect you would give the CEO. Treat women and men respectfully and fairly. And who knows, maybe we could even try living by the 10 Commandments. Just somewhere to start. If you want to see a better world, you have to lead a better world. That's where I'll leave today's episode. Don't forget to ask questions. Go ahead and ask me questions. You got questions about this episode? You want something explained a little more? Or again, if you want something for me to talk about next week, please drop it in the comments below and we'll talk about it later. I look forward to seeing you here next week. I will see you then. And again, please feel free to share this video to any and all of your friends that you think may need to hear this. Thanks. I will see you all later.